So to each and every one of you, we're not going to win this through violence. We're going to win it through justice. We're going to win it through compassion. We're going to win it through Minnesota Nice.
I can believe that her death is a tragedy while also recognizing that it's a tragedy of her own making.
This is Today as It Happened. Good Thursday evening to you. I'm Holly Furfer, here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories of the day. From the Senate voting on presidential war powers amid U.S. intervention in Venezuela, to protests roiling Minneapolis after a woman was shot to death by ICE on Wednesday. First, this morning our correspondent in Minneapolis gave us a look at a community in mourning. Live images now right out of Minneapolis as tensions continue to rise this morning following yesterday's shooting death of a 37-year-old mother of three who was confronted by ICE officers. You're looking at live pictures there of those ICE officers, and community members planned an emergency nonviolent protest outside of the Bishop Henry Whipple Federal Building, which is about 15 miles south of downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul. This building at Fort Snelling houses various federal agencies, including the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security. It actually houses the regional ICE headquarters, and it's where many immigration hearings are held. Protesters had gathered. It got a little bit physical this morning, but we are told tear gas or some gas-like substance was released and pepper balls were thrown into the crowd to subdue some of those protesters. You can see them. They've spread them out. ICE agents pushing them back a little bit from to the other side of the street there. Many holding signs, peaceful protesting as it seems, yelling and confronting ICE officers as they stand their ground outside of that federal building. Scripps News Group correspondent Jenna Ray is live for us in Minneapolis, not too far from there, outside where the situation and where that, I should say, the killing happened, the shooting happened yesterday. Jenna, what's happening there outside of where that incident happened?
Good morning, Holly. We're standing in the very block where Renee Nicole Good was shot and killed by ICE agents on Wednesday morning. A memorial has grown. I'm going to step out so you can see exactly what is going on here. This memorial has grown significantly in the last 12 hours. Several people in the community members, neighbors, people who live nearby have been coming and putting down flowers, lighting candles. A cross, as you can see, sits in the middle with Renee Nicole Good's name on it. Now, I want to walk through, what we know now and how this all unfolded starting yesterday. We know that ICE agents were performing routine operations in this very neighborhood, and that's why protesters were here in the first place. We talked with people who live in this area as well as witnesses who were here, and they say that they knew ICE was going to be here, which is why they had set up that protest. Now, the clash happened, of course, when her car was blocking the street, and federal authorities say that she was impeding ICE proceedings. Now, I want to warn you before we show you this video. We do have video from several different angles of this incident and the shooting happening. We're going to roll that so you can see exactly how this unfolded right now. Now, part of that clash, of course, as the law enforcement officials say, was Renee Nicole Good trying to block ICE agents with her car. It shows Good in that maroon Honda Pilot in the middle of the road, and ICE agents are yelling at her to get the F out of the car and move. They even come up to her door and yank on her driver's side door handle. It's then when Good tries to reverse and move her car, when federal authorities say that not only did she impede ICE proceedings, but she also hit an ICE agent, which resulted in one of them shooting her. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said last night that the shooting was 100% justified, but neighbors that we've talked to here that saw the entire incident unfold say otherwise. Hear from CJ, who saw the whole thing.
I heard him yelling at her to leave, to get out of the way, and then I saw the one guy who had shot her, start to step in front of the vehicle, and then he yelled stop after she had started to move forward, and then without him in the way, and he got directly in front of the car and then shot her, essentially, while another officer tried to rip her door open.
In addition to that, we know that protesters, of course, we've shown you video this morning of them already in St. Paul at that federal building, and we're anticipating more protests to unfold here across the Minneapolis region today. Holly.
And Jenna, what is the situation there with security? We see that memorial growing. We see neighbors and community members coming to pay their respects. But are there police surrounding that area? Are there ICE agents still in the neighborhood? What does it look like from there?
We have not seen many law enforcement, and we have not seen any ICE agents this morning. If I step out, you can probably see some barricades down here. Further down, this end of the street has been blocked off by vehicles and by other materials so that cars are not driving through this block. The other end of the block also barricaded off, so no vehicles have been in here this morning. The only people that we've seen here, of course, is a lot of media, neighbors, and other community members coming to lay flowers, candles, and pay their respects to Renee Nicole Good.
Scripps News Group correspondent Jenna Ray reporting live from Minneapolis. Thank you, Jenna. You're looking at some protesters outside the Bishop Henry Whipple Federal Building, where the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Defense have offices. It also houses regional ICE headquarters, and it's where there have been staging of these ICE officers. More than 2,000 headed to the city on Tuesday. You can see there mostly peaceful protests. About 50 federal law enforcement officers there in fatigues. They're assisted by U.S. Border Patrol agents. They're part of a special response team. And earlier we saw Gregory Bovino. He is considered the commander at large of those U.S. Border Patrol outside walking down, assessing the situation. As you see, it's pretty calm. Our own Scripps News investigative correspondent Patrick Terpstra is live there outside of the building. And Patrick, we saw earlier Gregory Bovino walking by. Things seem pretty calm, you know, a lot of shouting, a lot of yelling, but it doesn't seem like there's much action. What are you seeing from the ground?
Well, in fact, Mr. Bovino is still here. He's right in front of us right there. As we pan over, you can see him standing there. He has been surveying the scene out here where we have Customs and Border Patrol agents that have been here. We can actually stick with that shot if you want over there. You can see he's actually also got a couple of canisters there, so he is very much prepared potentially for confrontation, which is the case really with all of these agents that have been lining the road here. Behind him, that building, that is a federal building that is also an ICE field office in St. Paul. Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. The shooting happened yesterday in Minneapolis, which is about 15 minutes away. But as we stand here, I can point out to you, we have one side where you have these agents, and they are essentially staring across the way, just about 6 feet. A lot of movement right now. Someone is running toward. Being asked to stay back here.
No. You
Someone's
back up.
being tackled. Luke, if you could get in there and just see someone's being tackled and arrested. This is the first, really the first thing we have seen like this before. Someone basically darted into the crowd of agents there, was quickly taken down to the ground there. It appears to be somebody that was a civilian.
All right.
Yep, he's standing up right now. He is in handcuffs, and we're being asked how to move back. Luke, if we can move back.
Guys, you gotta back up.
I'm going to pick up our cable here to make sure nobody trips.
Hey, push up to where they were at,
So
man.
we see these little bursts of action like that, and certainly that was the case, Holly, when we saw Greg Bovino come here to survey
This is all for show. Greg Bovino wants for
aside
fucking
from
no
something
reason.
like that, this really has been quite peaceful.
And now let's take a look at some of our other top headlines of the day. Tragic news out of Salt Lake City. 2 people are dead and 6 others injured after a shooting outside a Mormon church. That shooting happened Wednesday in the parking lot of a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints building. Dozens of people were attending a funeral inside at the time. Police say this was not a random incident, but do not believe the shooting was targeting the religion. All victims were adults. No suspect is in custody. The Trump administration is moving forward with plans to acquire Greenland from Denmark. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will meet with Danish and Greenlandic officials next week to discuss the strategic Arctic territory. Rubio told lawmakers the administration wants to purchase the world's largest island rather than use military force. President Trump says controlling Greenland is necessary for U.S. security as China and Russia increase their presence in the Arctic region. President Trump signed a memorandum withdrawing the United States from 66 international organizations. The White House says the groups no longer serve American interests. They include 31 United Nations organizations and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. That's a bedrock treaty for international climate cooperation that the U.S. joined in 1992. Coming up on Today As It Happened, a busy day on Capitol Hill as the Senate votes on presidential war powers and the House votes on extending health care subsidies. Stay with us for Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed's reporting from the Hill. That's after the break. Thanks for staying with us on Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer, here with your daily look at the day's biggest stories. The U.S. Senate just advanced a resolution that would limit President Trump's ability to conduct further attacks against Venezuela. Democrats and 5 Republicans voted in favor of the War Powers resolution. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed is live for us on Capitol Hill. And Nate, this is sending a big message to the Trump administration. But what comes next?
Yeah, Holly, but this is pretty much exactly that. It's a message to the Trump administration. This is not something that will really limit the ability for President Trump to continue U.S. involvement in Venezuela in the southern hemisphere. There's a lot of questions about just exactly what this will accomplish, other than sending that message to the White House that not just Democrats, but a handful of Republicans are, have concerns about what direction this conflict could be going, as the Trump administration has repeatedly refused to rule out any further use of military force on the ground in Venezuela as they look to set up a government that has favorable conditions to do business with the United States, to trade oil with the United States. So a lot of questions there. I asked Senator Rand Paul, the Republican from Kentucky, one of the handful of Republicans to vote with Democrats on this measure, just exactly what the message he's sending is. Take a listen. Even though this will likely be vetoed, do you think you're still sending an important message to the White House here?
It's an important message to everybody in the country that war is an important thing and should be discussed. I consider it my most sacred of all duties to talk about whether I send your kid or my kid to war. And it's a vote that our founding fathers felt to a person, from Hamilton to Jefferson. They all believed that the power to initiate or declare war should be in Congress. They debated back and forth whether the president should have the role. They decided that the execution of the war would be the president's prerogative. The initiation and declaration would be the prerogative of Congress. So I think it's just an incredibly important vote. Now, from a practical point of view, we will be on it next week, so we will be debating this. Is there enough momentum from that debate that the House would pick this up? I think unlikely. The House pretty much, it's not a privileged vote in the House, so I don't know that this ever gets to the president's desk. But it's still an important debate to have, and a long time coming, because one of the arguments against this is, presidents never pay any attention to the Constitution. Presidents have been doing this forever, of both parties, and all that's true. But it doesn't mean it's correct. The reason the Founding Fathers gave this power to Congress is to make it not so easy to go to war, to make it that there would be more fulsome debate before you went to war. They were tired of the eternal wars of Europe. They wanted less war. And they actually, specifically in the debates over the Federalist Papers, said we don't want monarchical powers. We don't want, the president will have noticeably less power than the English king had. That was done purposely.
And again, the goal here to send a message to the White House. So the Republicans who voted in favor of that war powers resolution really trying to make clear to President Trump that their goal here, not necessarily to stop the conflict, but certainly just let the president know that they have questions about where things go from here. And obviously this will trigger a whole lot more debate on the Senate floor. There's the question of whether this could come up in the House of Representatives. But the reality is here, Holly, if this were to get to President Trump's desk, as Rand Paul said, it likely would be vetoed by the president. This would be limiting his own power to conduct military strikes or intervention in Venezuela. So again, a powerful message here from Capitol Hill, but at the same time, just that, a message, not exactly concrete action.
All right, Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed live on Capitol Hill for us. Thanks, you, Nate.
Holly.
Just ahead on Today As It Happened, with New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani now in office, how will the city butt heads with the Trump administration over immigration enforcement? Scripps News correspondent Alex Miller has that story after the break. Welcome back to Today as It Happened. Okay, let's check back in on our daily briefing of the day's top stories.
Minnesota is a train wreck. It is corrupt, and it was under the leadership of Governor Walz and this mayor that they allowed it to happen, and they let criminals and illegals and people abuse programs and steal the money, and now they're allowing violence to go forward on the streets as well.
In just the last hour, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem taking questions about that incident in Minneapolis. She is actually in New York and wanted to talk about another immigration enforcement effort there. Not surprisingly, most of the questions involve that deadly ICE shooting in Minneapolis. Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller is live in New York City, where the news conference wrapping up just a little less than an hour ago. Alex, the best way to describe Kristi Noem might be defensive, and she did not pull back from her comments that this was an act of domestic terrorism.
That's right, Del. She doubled down on the comments that she made yesterday just after the shooting happened. She called it a tragic situation, but she essentially said that she believes that when all of the evidence is laid out, that the officers' actions were justified. Listen.
This is an experienced officer who followed his training, and we will continue to let the investigation unfold into the individual and continue to follow the procedures and policies that happen in these use of force cases. But let's remember the events that surrounded what happened yesterday on that tragic situation was that these individuals had followed our officers all day, had harassed them, had blocked them in. They were impeding our law enforcement operations, which is against the law. And when they demanded and commanded her to get out of her vehicle several times, she did not. This was an act of domestic terrorism.
Del, she also said that this was an act of self-defense, and something else that she added was that officer went to the hospital. She says he was hit by a vehicle. We have reviewed images, video, as we've shown you, from multiple angles, and it is unclear whether the officer actually made contact with the vehicle. It is still something that we are trying to confirm here. There is one angle that shows him jumping back at points, but again, we do not know if he actually made contact with that vehicle. She called Minnesota a train wreck, saying that it was corrupt and that they've allowed violence on the street, and has said that she has not ruled out sending even more officers in there. She was also asked about the reporting that we have that says that Minnesota investigators are being barred right now from taking part in this probe. She says they have no jurisdiction on this investigation. And as you mentioned, she's here in New York City talking about a completely different issue, but obviously there is increased tension between ICE and the New York City sanctuary city policies. Mamdani, the new mayor, he's been in office about a week now. He ended an executive order on day one about ICE workers working with Rikers Island to identify people as they go through these investigations. And there were tensions even before Mamdani came into office. In October, there were tensions on Canal Street where protesters clashed with ICE officials as the ICE officials were working down in that area. Mamdani made some comments yesterday about Minneapolis and about how this could impact New York. Listen to what he said.
The news coming out of Minneapolis is horrific. This is one part of what has been a year full of cruelty. And we know that when ICE agents attack immigrants, they attack every single one of us across this country. And this is a city and will always be a city that stands up for immigrants across the 5 boroughs. And I have made it clear to everyone within my city government, and that extends to NYPD, that we are going to uphold our sanctuary city policies. We are going to adhere to them, that we are not here to assist ICE agents in their work.
Now, Del, she made it clear that Mamdani's team has not been cooperative with her team, at least as far as ICE agents go. But she did say that he has had productive conversations with the president. We know just about a month or so ago, right after he was elected, he spent some time in the Oval Office with the president where they had a chummy exchange. And obviously, Mamdani is trying to keep ICE out of New York City, but also the National Guard. So it is a very fine line that both sides are walking right now as to what happens next here in New York.
Alex, I don't know if you know the answer to this, so I don't know is a legitimate answer if you want to offer it up. But as Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary, was speaking, did she offer up an explanation as to why ICE was in that specific neighborhood. After all, this is supposed to be an exercise across the country to rid America of rapists, criminals, and violent people from Venezuela. Did they say whether there were any rapist, criminals, or violent people from Venezuela in that neighborhood where this woman lost her life?
They did not. In the initial remarks, that was specifically about what's going on here in New York City and a separate operation that they are conducting here. But when there was the question and answer portion, and she was, of course, asked a lot about Minneapolis, I don't believe that she was asked what they were doing there, but she went on to say that she believes that they had been following these ICE officials as they were conducting their operations over the course of the day. Obviously, we do not know what the victims' place in all of this was, but she did not say exactly what happened there. And she went on to talk a little bit about, again, not ruling out sending more officials to Minneapolis to conduct more operations. But she did say, there was one other part, I'm looking for it here in my notes right now, where she talked about that they are looking for these criminals and rapists, but obviously there's been more arrests of not just criminals who are undocumented immigrants or even some citizens.
Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller for us live in New York. Alex, as always, we thank you.
Coming up on Today as It Happened.
That very ICE officer nearly had his life ended, dragged by a car 6 months ago, 33 stitches in his leg. So you think maybe he's a little bit sensitive about somebody ramming him with an automobile? What that headline leaves out is that that woman was there to interfere with a legitimate law enforcement operation.
Welcome back to Today as It Happened, Scripps News end-of-day snapshot of our biggest stories. So let's pick up right where we left off.
We continue to follow the breaking news stemming from that deadly shooting in Minneapolis. The White House press briefing just wrapping up. It comes amid the unrest after that ICE agent shot and killed that woman. Vice President JD Vance telling reporters moments ago that what happened in Minneapolis was part of in his words, a larger left-wing conspiracy, saying the agents were doing their jobs to protect the American people. Vance referring to Democrats who are upset with what they saw as radicals. He says they make it nearly impossible for the men and women of law enforcement to do their jobs. And as was the case with Homeland Security, Vance once again maintained the officer who opened fire at point-blank range was about to be run over. So we will show you the video again so that you can decide what is right, what is wrong, and what will be subject to further investigation. Take a look.
No! No! Shame! Shame! Oh my God! What the
In that news conference, the Vice President referring to what you're seeing right now is classic terrorism. Homeland Security continues to maintain the 37-year-old mother of three was, in her words, Kristi Noem's words, a domestic terrorist. So let's go straight to our White House correspondent, Haley Bully, who is live in the North Lawn. She was in the room for that briefing, and she joins us now live. And Haley, first of all, it seems that even without an investigation, the Vice President believes the officer was justified in opening fire, claiming the life of an innocent woman.
Yeah, that's right. The Vice President making a series of definitive statements in this briefing as the White House is doubling down on its messaging, backing law enforcement, and vowing to double down on its larger efforts. The Vice President calling it an attack on law enforcement, maintaining that the woman shot was interfering with an operation, alleging she was part of what he called a broader left-wing network, while also conceding that he does not have evidence to say that she is a paid agitator and that the officer operated in self-defense, while also noting that the officer had been involved in an incident in which he was dragged by a car months ago. The investigation, though, is ongoing, and as it is ongoing, though, and pressed on the definitive statements, the Vice President maintaining that what you see is what you get, he said, referring to the different angles of the video. Of course, you just saw the video there to make a judgment for yourself about what unfolded. The Vice President saying that the officer had reason to believe he was under threat and maintained he acted in self-defense, while more broadly criticizing Democrats, echoing the messaging we have heard from the Department of Homeland Security and from from the White House in the hours since this shooting. The vice president saying that the best way to take down the temperature is to take the concerns about immigration to the ballot box, in his words, Dell. More broadly, as the administration has focused on immigration and fraud, though, the vice president also announcing that they will seek the confirmation of a new assistant attorney general to operate in an interagency task force and under the purview of the vice president and the president to specifically investigate fraud. He says starting in Minnesota, suggesting that that includes those inciting violence in their view, Dell. So bottom line, what we are hearing out of the White House today from the vice president, a series of definitive statements, a backing of law enforcement, a message that they are doubling down, supporting law enforcement, and on their efforts on the streets in particular, Dell.
And one point of clarification for the vice president, many of those upset with the video that you just saw include Republicans. So there is bipartisan outrage in Washington, D.C. Another statement the vice president made, the officer has absolute immunity, which is an indication that even if there is an investigation, nothing will be done.
Yeah, Dell, the vice president did make that statement indicating that. Again, the investigation from Homeland Security and other agencies ongoing. We have seen state authorities in Minnesota release a statement saying that they have not been allowed access to investigative material, and we have seen federal officials defend that move. Of course, we are closely following the developments as more information is revealed.
Haley, heated rhetoric from the vice president. I guess depending on which side of the aisle you sit, it's either heated or not heated. But he described the woman as a domestic terrorist, the same description that was offered up by Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, and a radical lefty.
Yeah, Dell, the vice president echoing those statements, doubling down on those statements. He, at the same time, while maintaining his belief that she violated law and that the officer acted in self-defense, also suggested that debate on intent was reasonable, but took issue with criticism of the specific ICE officer involved in this, and took issue with how the wording is framed around this shooting in particular. Again, though, he did also note that he does not have evidence to say that she is a paid agitator, despite calling her part of a broader left-wing network, in his words, Dow.
Haley, 24 hours now and hundreds of views of the particular videotape. The vice president continues to maintain that the woman was trying to hit the officer and that the officer was protecting himself and acting in self-defense. Several angles of the video seem to show the officer walking away. The White House yesterday quick to point out that they believe that the officer was literally fighting for his life. Has there been any recanting of the president's words from yesterday in which he seemed to describe this officer as being gravely wounded?
Though there's been no recanting of those words, what we have seen is a doubling down on those words, as evidenced with the vice president's remarks in the press briefing just moments ago. As you said, when he was pressed on the video, he said, "What you see is what you get." Those were his words in describing some of the definitive statements he was making ahead of any conclusion in the investigation to be revealed. And so what we are seeing is the administration really standing firm in their messaging on this, pointing to an angle shared by President Trump on Truth Social just yesterday. Of course, I will reiterate, we just showed you the video for you to decide and see for yourself how those events unfolded.
Perhaps the most basic fact that is not in dispute, a 37-year-old mother of three is now dead. Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull for us live on the North Lawn. Haley, thank you very much.
Straight ahead on Today's It Happened.
Look, this is a very complicated case. We need to see all the evidence before final judgment is rendered. But clearly, politicians should stay away from it and allow the experts to do their job.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. Let's jump right back into our rundown of our top stories of the day.
Venezuela saying it is releasing a significant number of citizens and foreigners from its prisons today. The head of the country's legislature calling it a gesture to seek peace after the capture of former President Nicolas Maduro. Despite the news, the Associated Press is reporting very little movement outside that prison where many of the detainees are being held. A human rights group saying there are 863 people being held for political reasons as of December. Minnesota State Investigations Agency saying the United States Attorney's Office has barred it from investigating that fatal ICE shooting Wednesday. A 37-year-old mother of 3 is now dead. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, or the BCA, was set to conduct a joint investigation with the FBI. But the FBI now saying the federal government will lead the investigation on its own. Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz is demanding the state's participation.
I will continue to press that we be part of the investigation, that we do the investigation, so that Minnesotans can trust what the outcome is. I don't have a predetermined notion. Yes, I saw the video. Yes, I saw that. But a thorough investigation will see what happened before that. It will take all factors in, and it will come up with a fair and just conclusion. And we will accept that.
Alex Del Carmen is a criminologist and founder and CEO of Del Carmen Consulting, LLC. Mr. Del Carmen, thanks for being with us. We just heard from the Vice President JD Vance a moment ago saying this woman, in effect, is a domestic terrorist and that the people who have problems with the administration's agenda to take it up at the ballot box. How concerned are you that peaceful protests could be turned against those who actually take to the street to voice their opinions one way or the other?
Well, good afternoon, and thanks for having me again. I think it's really concerning, right, that some of the political rhetoric coming from both sides is going to inflame and is going to result in more violence in the streets of the United States. Look, this is a very complicated case. We need to see all the evidence before final judgment is rendered. But clearly, politicians should stay away from it and allow the experts to do their job.
Are there things that we can determine based on what we see on the tape? From what you have seen, is there anything on the videotape to suggest that the officer's life was actually in danger?
Not based on what I've seen, right? Although I've only seen it from 2 or 3 different angles. As I've said before, I reserve judgment until the end of all evidence being considered. But what is clear to me is that the Department of Homeland Security has a very specific policy on shooting at moving vehicles, and that is they prohibit it unless the life of the officer or the life of other people around the officer is in jeopardy. In this particular case, what we see is the agent that almost gets in front of the vehicle and could have easily stepped aside and did not, and instead engaged in lethal force against the suspect. And look, in most jurisdictions in the United States, this would be an act that would not be allowed.
The Supreme Court has actually weighed in on this in several cases. Several law enforcement experts who have seen the video say there was no reason, as you indicated, to open fire, as the officer simply could have taken down the license plate and followed the woman home. So that raises the question, was there anything that you saw that would warrant the use of deadly force?
Not through my lenses and not based on what I've seen so far. Once again, we tell police officers that they never shoot at a moving vehicle unless their lives and the lives of other people are in peril. What you see here is not only a really illegal, in my view, move by the agent, but also a tactical mistake, right? So think about the fact that this particular agent is shooting into a vehicle where his fellow brothers and sisters are around the vehicle that could have easily gotten shot as a result of this. And so I think from a tactical perspective, we will use this video, regardless of the outcome of the investigation, as what not to do in a situation like this where you could endanger the other agents' lives.
Alex, I want you to listen to what the Vice President told reporters just a moment ago with regards to whether or not it is possible that no one will be charged as a result of this case. Take a listen to what he had to say on that.
The precedent here is very simple. You have a federal law enforcement official engaging in federal law enforcement action. That's a federal issue. That guy is protected by absolute immunity. He was doing his job.
Is it possible that even though a woman, a mother of 3, is dead, no one will face charges as a result of what we saw unfold on videotape from several angles?
Things are always possible in this world. And I can tell you, as somebody that's been training police officers and I've taught at Quantico, at the FBI Academy, National Academy for several years, I've seen situations where people are simply, they walk off, right? But I will tell you once again that I think it's irresponsible for both the administration as well as the other side, the governor's office, to be involved in this matter until the professionals do their due diligence. And I will say to you that even though it's possible, I hope that the investigators take this matter very seriously, that they are objective throughout the process, and that they provide the public and the media the answers that we all seek.
This is simply a call for your opinion. Based on what you have seen so far, should someone, anyone, face charges as a result of what happened yesterday?
Based on what I have seen so far, I don't see how the shooting could have been justified under the color of law. I furthermore do not understand why this particular agent did not simply get out of the way when this vehicle was moving towards the agent in a slow manner, and the agent is almost clearly in front of the vehicle on purpose. So once again, based on the vantage point that I have seen so far, while reserving judgment until all the evidence comes out, I don't see how this could have clearly been something allowed under policy or under federal law.
Alex Del Carmen, criminologist and founder and CEO of Del Carmen Consulting. Alex, as always, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up on Today as It Happened.
Overall, vaping rates are declining, which is good news, despite the fact the data I just gave you. Addiction seems to be intensifying.
Two-thirds of young nicotine users plan to quit for the new year. New data from Truth Initiative shows 67% of users ages 18 to 24 want to break free from addiction in 2026. But quitting is getting harder as today's tobacco products are bigger, cheaper, and more potent than ever before. Nearly 1 in 5 young adults now risk long-term nicotine addiction. Kathy Crosby is the CEO and president of Truth Initiative, the nation's largest nonprofit public health organization dedicated to achieving a culture where all young people reject smoking, vaping, and nicotine. And she's joining us now live from Washington. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So your report shows that tobacco industry continues to aggressively target young people. They're manufacturing and marketing products that are really appealing to young people. So at what ages did you find kids are starting to use these products, and how are these companies getting kids hooked?
Yeah, so, e-cigarettes are still the most predominantly used product of both youth and young adults. And we know from the most recent Monitoring the Future report that 5% of 8th graders are vaping, 10% of 10th graders are vaping, and 15% of 12th graders are vaping. But that number for 12th graders goes to 22% when you look at all nicotine products. And so a new report tracking trends in youth nicotine use shows that while overall vaping rates are declining, which is good news, despite the fact the data I just gave you, addiction seems to be intensifying. And so what we know through the data is young people who use nicotine are using it frequently. Nearly 40% of teenagers who vape are vaping most days of the month, and that rises to more than 50% for young adults. So we're seeing that most of these youth and young adults are reaching for a nicotine product within an hour of waking up, and that's a real signal of dependence. And more importantly, is that many of them using more than one product. So while they might have started their tobacco addiction via an e-cigarette, once you're addicted, we see fluid dual use and poly-use between cigarettes, cigars, nicotine pouches, which are fundamentally on the rise, and then also cannabis use. And it's really important to note that the marketplace today has fundamentally changed from even where it was 5 years ago. Products are stronger, they're cheaper, they're more addictive. We now have top-selling products called smart vapes that basically gamify nicotine use. Illegal flavored products that are disposable dominate the retail shelves, and FDA has only authorized 34 of them, so the vast majority of these products are illegal to be sold. So the nicotine marketplace is evolving faster than regulation can keep up with it. These products are universally accessible, they're very appealing, and they're engineered to addict. So we continue to be very worried about how people are using nicotine.
And so then it leads to the question, what does that suggest about enforcement? Is regulation keeping pace with the marketplace?
I mean, honestly, I think that everything is evolving faster than regulation can keep up with it. And with universal access of these products with flavored products that are so appealing, and with federal resources having been cut at both CDC and FDA this year, there is a real and urgent need for stronger enforcement, for sustained prevention funding, and for expanded access to quitting programs like X program from Truth Initiative. So, we are at risk of losing our hard-won progress against nicotine addiction if these factors don't come into play.
And how many of these products are coming into the country illegally, and where are they coming from?
The majority of these products are coming in illegally from China. And what FDA does through their process is they review all of these products scientifically to understand if they're appropriate for the protection of public health. Over 99% of these products, FDA has denied authorization, so they're not legal to be sold in the US right now.
California heavily restricts flavored tobacco sales, basically banning most flavored products. And as a result, they've seen a significant drop in sales, I believe around 37%. So should other states follow suit, or should there be tighter federal restrictions?
So flavor bans absolutely work, and we've also seen phenomenal success in the state of Massachusetts. So policy really does drive usage, and so there should be a wonderful combination of federal and state and local policies. But right now, the federal landscape, FDA has said these products are illegal, but the enforcement of getting them off the market is really not happening. And I think retailers are also complicit in this. So FDA has only authorized 34 products. All of them are either tobacco flavored or menthol flavored. So all of these, disposable flavored vapes that come in blue raspberry and unicorn, all these kind of outrageous flavors are really designed to appeal to youth, and they're illegal. They should come off the market.
So, Kathy, how do we keep these products out of the hands of young people? I mean, that's the bottom line.
So youth prevention absolutely does work, but you have to have campaigns in market that really drive the social norm. So our campaign, Truth Initiative, we're really trying to help youth and young adults understand how to outsmart nicotine. So we're talking to youth who are already using, and we're trying to promote the fact that you don't have to quit alone. And the research that you started with, the fact that 2/3 of nicotine users that are youth and young adults plan to quit. They want to quit. These products are so addictive that it's impacting their physical health. It's impacting their mental health. And so we're really trying to promote You Got This Day, which is to help people that are currently using the product understand that quitting is very hard, relapse is very common. In fact, it takes up to 11 times to be able to quit successfully. So we were offering free proven support through X program. It was developed with Mayo Clinic. We offer personalized quit plans, interactive text messages, the longest standing peer community support group of current quitters, former quitters, relapse quitters. And we know that we've helped nearly 1 million young people on their quitting journey. And you can increase your odds of quitting by up to 40% by using X programs. So we're trying to really focus on how to help them break their addictions.
I'm Holly Furfer. Have a wonderful Thursday night.